My name is Tracy McKay, and I'm 38 years old. While my spouse is away on business, I support ourselves by working odd jobs around the house. I am currently living alone because my 16-year-old kid attends a boarding high school in a different state. I wanted to go with my husband when his transfer was announced, but he didn't enjoy the thought of leaving our house empty and his family's home alone. My employment as a housekeeper primarily entails going to the houses of regular clients. The older clients prefer familiar faces, so it's difficult to take long breaks or quit. I forced myself to stay by myself, even though I really wanted to go with him. We met while I was an office worker at the company where he currently works, and that is where we got married. At work, he is a happy mood enhancer who is well-liked by both genders. He made work excursions and drinking parties enjoyable by planning them ahead of time. I made an effort to support him by helping him with every situation. That was the first time I had gone to dinner by myself with Scott. Tracy, I apologize for being late. When I finish this preparation, I'll buy you dinner. Really? That's great. I'll work hard on the rest. Think about what you want to eat while you work. Okay. It was getting late, so maybe he invited me to dinner. We had never discussed personal matters before that day, but we spoke a lot while eating. We had a great talk because we had a lot in common, and I learned a lot about Scott that I didn't know before. We discovered we had a lot in common as a result, and after that day we progressively began asking each other out to drinks. It was ideal for after work because we both enjoyed drinking, and we frequently went out on our own. Going out together was becoming second nature to us. I knew it was a date when we went to an amusement park the first time he invited me on a holiday. This came up in a discussion about enjoying thrill rides. I yelled, "Scott, this is definitely a date, isn't it?" As the roller coaster was about to gently approach its peak, Scott opened his mouth to say something when the roller coaster suddenly crashed. With a broad smile, he came down and added, "I always consider it a date." Scott then took hold of my hand. It was unbelievable to me that I was dining, drinking, and strolling through the theme park while holding hands with the highly regarded Scott. That day, we thoroughly enjoyed the amusement park and a few of the rides. Scott and I grew closer after that day, but we never discussed starting a formal relationship. I figured we must be in a relationship because of how frequently we saw each other and what we did together, even though it was too obvious to inquire. Then a woman contacted the corporate phone one day while she was at work. "Excuse me, may I have your name?" was a standard inquiry for business phone calls, but I inquired uneasily. All she responded was, "Please connect me to Scott." I was stunned for a few seconds before saying, "I'm Scott's wife." I quickly said, "Please hold," and put her on hold after gathering my courage. I passed the message, "Scott, you have a call on line 3, and hurried to the bathroom. He avoided talking about our relationships or other such topics for a purpose. Scott's marriage was unknown to me when he first started working for the company. I had thought he was unmarried. I couldn't focus on my work, so I left early that day. However, Scott McKay delivered a cake to my house that evening. "Sorry about today. It must have been a shock." "Huh? I had no idea you were married." Of course, I was surprised. "I'm sorry I didn't talk about it properly. You shouldn't be here. Go back home. Actually, we're already in the process of getting divorced. So, I'm free now, and the call today was just about the divorce procedures. You don't need to make such excuses." "It's not an excuse. I love you, Tracy. Once the divorce is finalized, I want to marry you as soon as possible. Then, until everything is official, let's not see each other anymore, if that's what you say." "I understand." Scott chuckled. My bewilderment remained after speaking with him. I was curious in his marital status, the nature of his spouse, and the reasons behind their split. All these pointless ideas. What can I anticipate starting tomorrow? After being disturbed for a few days, I finally had to wait because I loved spending time with Scott. Then, one day, I entered an elevator during my lunch break. Scott also hurried in. We were the only two people on the elevator. "It's all right now. If you're okay with a divorced guy like me, please go out with me." "Yes." Took a while before we officially started dating, but from there, things moved along swiftly. The divorce is finalized. Sorry for making you wait, Tracy. Really? You actually got divorced? I told you I would. I thought in such situations, people just say that but never actually divorce. I've been worried. All this time, word got around the office that we were dating. After we were married and had a kid, my life progressed in an almost unnervingly seamless manner. I left my job when we decided to be married. I've heard that Scott's lack of children with his ex-wife may have contributed to their divorce. But I never really inquired. I became a mommy after giving birth to our first baby and enjoying a new life after getting married. I had two people to pour my love into from that day on. Scott loved our son and me. And I started working part-time for a housekeeping service after a long time of dedicating myself to raising our baby. My son was supposed to attend a boarding high school for athletes when he started junior high school. So instead of rushing to get a job, I reasoned that it would be preferable to gradually acclimatize to the employment. Then Scott nodded, of course. Then, Scott's transfer was chosen when our son was enrolled in high school. Suddenly feeling lonely, I threw myself into my duties, cooking, cleaning, and doing the elderly people's laundry. For me, living alone turned into a rewarding career. I felt like I was with my own family as I visited nearly the same houses every day. After several months of this kind of existence, I had become used to living alone. While having breakfast on this rare day off, I considered doing a complete cleaning of my house. As the TV started to make noise, I could see that, following his transfer, this was the site of Scott's company. There was constant coverage of a tsunami in the news. A huge wave struck Scott's company head-on in the video. When I came to, I quickly picked up my phone and dialed Scott. The phone ended abruptly. Yes. Scott? Where are you? At the office, where else? Don't call during work. All I could do was feel uneasy. Was it just that he wasn't at the office while I was speaking with him on the phone? Is he not aware of the news? Nothing suggested he was aware of the tsunami. Still, that was an odd tone for him to speak in. I made the decision to give Scott McKay's employer's corporate office a call because I was feeling concerned. My name is Tracy McKay. Could I speak to my husband, please? Miss McKay, we always appreciate your support. Unfortunately, Mr. McKay is off today. Ah, of course. Sorry about that. Is Victor available then? Please hold on a moment. My coworker Victor started working for the company the same year I did. That was the day I was supposed to meet him. From the conversation with the office worker, I thought I knew what might be happening, but I needed proof. Hi Victor, long time no see. Sorry for calling you out of the blue. What's up? You haven't changed at all. Tracy, look at me already hitting middle-age spread. I wanted to ask you something. Where's Scott working now? Huh? Scott has been working with us continuously. Why do you ask? I knew it. What's wrong? He told me he was transferred, and we haven't been living together since April. What happened? Did you two have a fight? It must be another woman, just like when he was with me. But surely he wouldn't lie about something like that. Probably thought that if he was transferred, he could be with her every day. Let me look into it. Act like you don't know anything. Tracy, this morning I saw the news about the tsunami and called him in a panic. He said he was at work. It seems strange if he was supposed to be at his transfer location. I see. I'll let you know as soon as I find out anything. Thank you, Victor. I was alone and contemplated divorce at this age as I waited for Victor's call. I was powerless, but I had to leave them if Scott was indeed unfaithful. Victor then got in touch with me 3 days later. When Victor and I met that day, everything made sense. To catch Scott off guard, Victor had feigned to ask for counsel over a rumor of his own affair. Instead, he returned with information about Scott. Scott was sharing a residence with a youthful lady, who seemed to make him lunches every day. He had lied to me about being moved, and I couldn't forgive him for it. I went to make dinner at the house I was in charge of with my housekeeping service while I considered what to do with my emotions. Grandpa Dan, the homeowner, was a kind and intelligent man who lived alone without family. Grandpa Dan, I'll make mixed rice and simmered fish for dinner today. Thank you, Tracy. But is something wrong? No, I'm fine. Nothing is wrong. You don't have to make anything fancy. Just talk to me. Well, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. You must be going through something tough. Yes, I told you my husband was transferred, but it seems that was all a lie. He's been going to the company as usual, but he's living with a young girl. Your husband has really done something flashy. He still doesn't realize that I know the truth, but honestly, I can't decide what to do. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Of course, I don't want to be with him anymore. Then you should clear out his belongings from the house. But if I do that, my son and I won't be able to live, you know. Tracy, ever since you started coming here, my days have become truly enjoyable. Trying to calm my rage and grief, Grandpa Dan was talking softer than normal. Now it's my turn to repay the favor. What do you mean? I used to be a president of a big company when I was healthier. I've never heard you mention that before. Indeed, his house is huge, and I had initially thought him to be a well-off elderly man. But as we became closer, such things stopped mattering. Once those titles are gone, people who used to be around me disappeared. Now I'm all alone. My wife passed away before me, and we never had children. It's lonely, I tell you. I'd like to say, get a divorce and become my wife. What? Just a name? Of course, if you were my wife, I could leave all my wealth to you. You, what? That's such a bizarre idea. The statement made by Grandpa Dan really stunned me. I felt like I had gained a strong ally and felt stronger even though I wasn't sure at the time if it was a prank or not. That would be too much, even tarnishing your family register. But first, let's get you a house. We'll start the discussion from there. Move all your and your son's belongings there. I had no idea what Grandpa Dan was talking about at first. I even considered the possibility that, at his age, he was experiencing dementia. But soon after, Grandpa Dan gave my son and me a brand new home. He expressed his desire to build the business around my efforts to spend more time with the elderly in their dying days. He suggested that I form a corporation and that I serve as its representative, saying, "You build and run it from here on out. I'll lay the groundwork for the company." In light of my circumstances and my son, I chose to embrace Grandpa Dan's kindness. There was hesitation no more. I made the decision to move on and let go of my affections for my spouse. I went to see my son on my next day off. I wanted to make sure he grasped the current situation and to go over everything with him. I had always considered him to be a youngster, but he had developed into a fine adult. He gave me his undivided attention and urged me to persevere. He said he wanted to thank Grandpa Dan and that he would pay him a visit during his long breaks. Only Scott's possessions remained in the old house after I finished the transfer alone. When our belongings were gone, the house was just a big, empty room. I turned to leave the wedding band and divorce papers at the door. Not surprisingly, during all of this, Scott had not gotten in touch with me. Even though I was still going to Grandpa Dan's place, I kept working at my prior employment. I talked to Grandpa Dan before I started the business about becoming a licensed care worker with the goal of launching an elderly-specific service. Grandpa Dan was thrilled with my proposal and encouraged me to obtain the certificate as quickly as possible. He also offered to pay for my living expenses and educational costs. There was no use in holding back now. I gladly embraced Grandpa Dan's assistance. Scott called me for the first time about 6 months later. I didn't call back even after class ended because I was in class and couldn't answer. My intention was to let Scott see for himself what was going on at home. Despite quitting my work, I took care of Grandpa Dan while attending school every day without missing a day. Whenever we could, we shared dinner together, and I stayed with him until he went to sleep. We resembled a family. Tracy, once your divorce is finalized, would you consider becoming my adopted child? You're too young to be my wife, but even if I bought you a house and started a business, there would still be plenty of money left. You're saying such things again. I'm in the last stage of my life. Additionally, this house would sell for a good price. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need you to handle this. Grandpa Dan, thank you, but I need you to stay well and be with us till my divorce is finalized. Right? Please give it some serious thought. I want my money to go to Tracy, or someone like you who works hard to stay close to the elderly and doesn't ask for anything in return. I want to use it properly. All right, I understand. Shall we retire for the day? Grandpa Dan seemed rushed, so maybe he wasn't feeling well. I considered driving him to the hospital. The following morning, I had multiple calls from Scott. The phone kept ringing, and I answered after about the 10th time. "Tracy, what's happening?" "Well, good to see you again. At last you came back." "Scott, you don't really need two residences, as you can see." "What? You assumed I was ignorant? You are sharing a home with a young girl and were not actually transferred." "Wait, what?" "Simply draft and turn in the divorce papers without delay. Don't need your help. We can end this quickly if you just go out. You're quite laid back." "Have you met another man?" "I'm working really hard to raise our child by myself since I've realized how worthless and untrustworthy you are. I don't have time to think about unimportant things. All I want is for you to vanish. I was in error. I apologize for the divorce. Please return, and let's speak. I promise never to return, and even after all of my begging, I will never forgive you. I'll end our relationship. Please don't end the relationship. I hope happiness for the two of you." "All right, good. Today I'm gonna file the divorce papers. Do it, please. And you ought to at least provide a sincere apology." "Oh, Tracy, I apologize for hurting your feelings. I apologize just like I did all those years ago when I learned that you were married. Proceed to handle the process." From there, I hurriedly began organizing the company's setup, hiring staff, setting up spaces, and obtaining licenses. The reason for my haste was that, although I took Grandpa Dan to the hospital right away, the doctor informed me that his condition was beyond repair and that he would not have much longer to live. Nevertheless, I wanted Grandpa Dan to see the business I had founded, and even before it opened for business, we had a lot of reservations and questions from clients. I raced. I had to do whatever I could as soon as possible before Grandpa Dan fell, and was transported to the hospital after just a bit more. "Grandpa Dan, I came to visit you." "Tracy, you're too busy to come to a place like this. I'm allowed to go out today. Let's go for a brief stroll." It sounds pleasant. Following a very lengthy period, Grandpa Dan and I went to the company, and I showed him the office layout that we had come up with jointly, the staff cars, the uniforms, and everything. We also took a group photo of the entire crew in front of the office. "I'm sorry, but who is this gentleman? I apologize for coming in so abruptly. My name is Tracy's dad." Grandpa Dan gave me a wink, but that was the last time I saw him grin. Maybe he was waiting to see the business finished. He died peacefully in his hospital bed that night. As a way of giving back to Grandpa Dan, I've made the decision to carry on with this work, remaining by the elderly throughout their final moments of happiness, exactly as he told me. Without this interaction, I most certainly wouldn't be where I am today. Grandpa Dan, it's my turn to repay you now. I felt like I had never felt more beautiful than I did when I made that commitment to him.